On. How you guys doing? I love you guys. Thank you for being here. I'm very appreciative and very grateful for your guys' support here. Thank you. This video is how to set security properly. The scenario is basically your homestead, your property, your bug out location, something along those lines, where you basically have a house, a structure, or several, and a little bit of land at least. I'm talking like, say an acre or two, maybe more if you got more. It's hard to do on properly unless, but you'll get the concepts. So that's where I'm coming from. That's the scenario I'm kind of talking about. If you fit into that scenario, great. If you don't, you can kind of, work these concepts to your benefit and tailor them to your situation and where you are. So, setting proper security. You need people, period. You cannot set proper security by yourself. If it's like just you, your wife, and your kids, or just you and your wife, or whatever, or just yourself, you cannot set proper security, period. With that said, what is proper security? And how many people does it take? And you'll understand when I start talking about personnel, why I always talk about how vital it is to have mutual assistance groups. Your tribes, teams, groups, whatever you want to call it. Very, very important, because just setting proper security is very man-hour intensive. So, setting proper security. First thing you need to think about is points, where you're going to put them. And that's terrain dependent. That's why I can't draw a map for you and show you guys. That's why I can just talk about it in the car. Because terrain dependent. I'd have no idea, it's all based on terrain. So much on terrain. High ground, advantage. Low ground, not so much. Be aware of micro terrain. Talking about little low spots in the ground, cuts, ditches, culverts, mounds in the ground, stuff like that an enemy can utilize that micro terrain to advance on your position unseen or have less chance of being seen. You want to have eyes on those obstacles, and not even micro terrain, but major terrain features. And you want to mitigate those blind spots in those areas. So say you're in a location and it's basically wooded, or even if you're in a location where it's just structure and flat ground, you might be able to, terrain dependent of course, set security with 4 people. It's called 4-point. Set 4-point security is, what I'm saying, 1 on each of the 4 corners of the house. It doesn't have to be in the corners, it could be on the sides, whatever. It's just a 4-point. So that you can kind of, although still not realistically, maintain overlapping fields of fire. You're not going to be able to maintain overlapping fields of fire with 4 people, especially if they're spread out. If you have an area where there's a bunch of structures, 4-point, you're not going to have overlapping fields of fire. But hopefully you're not too far apart where you can still hear what's going on between you, eyes on, stuff like that. But the odds are you probably won't be able to attain that. What is an overlapping field of fire? So an overlapping field of fire is, like, say you're looking at this point. That's your field of fire. Okay, and your buddy next to you is right here. See how my fingers overlap? So there's additional coverage in this area, and then you have another person over here, overlapping. You can see how labor intensive and personnel intensive that would be if you really wanted. I mean, you can get more of a field of fire than that. It's just that's on my fingers. You could do that field of fire. But more than 90 degrees is not very realistic. A 90-degree field of fire is about what your limit you want to be. If you go like 180, or if you're on a corner, you're talking 270 degrees, almost. 200 230, 240-ish degrees. So, I mean, and obviously you want to make sure that your fields of fire are set up where you will not engage friendly personnel. That's where you can put in limit sticks. Basically, like wherever your position is. And this is so varied also. You can be in a bunker type, you can be in a cave type, you can be in a an in-ground type, you can be in a some kind of building structure. I would suggest it being camouflaged so they can't see where your post is. But anyway, at the limits where, give an extra, 15 degrees or so, 10 to 15 degrees of coverage. So you put these little sticks up on either side of you so that, or metal bars, whatever it is, something. Or even the way you build your structure. If you build your structure in such a way that you cannot go over too far and shoot over too far and end up shooting your buddy. Limit your fields of fire. Be aware of friendly fire. Let me see. So, yes, 4-point bare minimum. 6 or 8 or more even, maybe, depending on the terrain, the area, the how spread out they are, and how much terrain you have to cover. How much terrain do you have to have eyes on? Are there terrain features that limit travel? Also, do you have a sheer cliff? But you got to remember that sheer cliff up or down, or what you think of as impassable terrain, is not. It is still passable. If a dedicated, motivated force wants to travel that terrain to get to your position, they will. So you got to remember that. Don't ever just think, oh, that's good, that side's good. Don't ever think that. Obviously, there will be more emphasis on certain areas, maybe. You can funnel. You can set up your security and your property and stuff like that to funnel opponents, bad guys, whatever, into certain areas and have them as like kill zones if you have to defend yourself and your property. But okay, so we'll just go bare minimum. Say 4 people can properly set security at your location. But those 4 people can't sit there 24 hours a day. So what length of time? Can they sit there for 12 and just do 12 on, 12 off? Well, yeah, maybe, but see, that 12 on, 12 off then becomes, and you got an hour on either end to eat, get dressed, get geared up, get equipped, go through your pre-watch brief with your whoever's in charge, give me a pre-watch brief, intelligence on what's going on situationally and everything like that. And that all takes time, so you got to figure an hour on either end. So then you got 14 on, 10 off. Okay, then you still have to hygiene, you still have to shower, you still have to, you still got to do all those things. So when do you do those things? When do you sleep? It's very difficult. I've been 12 on, 12 off in security in the military, and it sucks. You don't do much else other than just eat, sleep, go on watch. Eat, sleep, go on watch. And also you got to think of, if you're sitting out there for 12 hours, that's not an optimum position to put your watch standers, your guards out there in, because they'll just get complacent. They'll get tired. They won't be as sharp near the end of their watch as they were at the beginning. It's just human nature. It's a fact. You cannot maintain a proper level of awareness for that period of time. So then you got to go to 8s. You got 3 8s. That's more doable. That is realistically doable. Although 8 hours on post is still quite a bit of time to maintain your level of awareness, your situational awareness, your edge. So 6 hours is better. So you got 4 6s. So just say 3 8s. Say you're just going to have to deal with that. So you're going to have 12 people in just your guard force, manning your fixed fighting positions, your LPOPs, however it's set up. 12 people. 16 if you go 6-hour watches. You see how this works. It's not the best way to go about it. It is labor and man-hour intensive. But you're in a situation where you got to do the best you can. So, with that said, what are some of the things you should have on post for your watch standers? You should have a chart in front of them, that a map, their entire field of, their entire area of responsibility, their field of fire, basically, their coverage, the area they're responsible for monitoring. A map drawn out of that area with everything drawn on it, like here's that rock. And then a yardage. How many yards is that rock from the post? Here's that tree, here's this grove of trees, here's this micro terrain, here's this ditch. All those things drawn out should be a visual representation right below the opening to where they're looking out, or right next to the opening, right where they can easily look at it quickly. Have it laminated, have it, taped to the wall, whatever it is, taped to the rock, taped to the log, whatever the situation is. Have it right there, readily accessible. So that whenever you're engaged, if you have to engage targets, you know what range they're at. So you know your holdovers. And this comes into training. How to accurately engage threats at all these different ranges. That's why each watch position, what I would say is try to put the same person in the same watch position. It gets boring. Yes, I know people will talk about like, oh, I want that watch over there, that position better. I get it, but it's not the time for complaining. It's the time for doing. The reason why am I saying this, is because if you put the same people there every time, they're going to get used to that terrain. They're going to know every single thing in that terrain and where it belongs, so they're much more able to point out what is out of place, what doesn't belong, what is there now that wasn't there before, so that they'll have indication of a threat coming. What other things do you want to put on your post? You want to have water in there for them, some MREs, rations, something like that. Because even 8 hours, basically like a snack. They don't need to eat a meal. They're not going to be cooking food in there, nothing like that. But have a snack. What else? Well, and I prefer 2-person watch teams. So even with a 4-point, you're talking about 8 people times 3. So you're talking 24 people to do that. This is what I'm talking about. MAG, group, team, tribe. So important. So vital. Okay, what are some other things to put in there? Especially if it's even if it's a 2-man post or a solitary post. Have a latrine, a way to go to the bathroom, a poop bucket. That's easy. Just get a Lowe's bucket, Home Depot bucket, Walmart bucket, whatever. Get one of those camp toilet lids. Just snaps on the top. Take the bucket, set it in there, put a big black plastic bag in there or something like that. Put the lid on top, the toilet seat lid, and then have a roll of toilet paper, some wipes, whatever. They're on post. And if they're by themselves, they can just do whatever they need to do right there on post while they're maintaining watch. Unless it's a prone position type thing where you're laying down. If it's that kind of post, obviously they'll have to leave. So what do? If you have to go, you always want eyes on. Call for relief. Have somebody come up. That's where I'll get into communications. Have somebody come up, relieve you, have them watch, assume the watch basically, and you go to the bathroom, and then relieve them and send them back. That's another reason why you can't just have your watch standers. Well, your relief, who is your relief? Who is that? That can be an off-watch personnel. Normally what we do is you can set up either way. The off-going watch is responsible for doing reliefs like that, or the oncoming watch. And you can rotate it. it doesn't have to be all 4 people or all however many people. If you're off going watch, just stick around and wait. They're doing other things. They're eating, they're hygiene, they're showering, shaving, stuff like that, or they're working in the garden, they're helping out in other areas. Because divisional labor is important, but you can't just have people also that are full-time security. Unless you absolutely have to, because you have nobody else. And they're stuck in a really bad rotation, that's all they can do. I get it. But just have 1 extra person, and then just rotate through the people who does it each time. Ongoing, off-going, it doesn't really matter. We usually go off. You should do off-going. Because when you come off watch, you do things, stuff like that. And then go get some sleep, wake up, get yourself woke up, come on to watch, rested and sharp. Oh, excuse me. Okay, what are some other things to have on post? Binoculars would be a very good thing to have. A set of high-power binoculars so that you can see better. You can look out there. There's other things like spotting scopes and stuff like that, but those are much more difficult to use. Binoculars are way better. And you don't always want to be using your weapon optic, like your scope on your rifle, because to get a proper vision, you got to close one eye. Well, if you're closing that one eye all the time, it just leads to all these kind of eye strain issues and stuff like that. So binoculars are the best idea. Comms. Talking about comms. You have to have a way to talk to the guys in the rear with the gear in case you need backup. You need support. You need a relief. You see something out of the ordinary. You see a force approaching that is way beyond your capability of dealing with yourself. And even if it is within your capability of dealing with yourself, you do not want to be the only person that knows. Period. Ever. That is one of the biggest rules in the military. No matter where you are, on a ship, on a wherever you are, in combat, on the ground, whatever. You never want to be the only person that knows. Because, just like police, when they pull up on a scene, they call it in. They say, hey, I'm pulling the license plate over or something like that. I'm at this location and stuff like that. So that somebody knows where they're at. In case something happens to them, they can come help out. Because if nobody knows, nobody knows. If you try to do something on your own, you get taken out, and then bam, next thing you know, bad guys are inside your perimeter, and you're SOL. You don't even know they are. One example, or I'll tell a little story. Side note. So there was this ship in the Navy. It was a surface ship. I think it was an aircraft carrier. A person was, I don't know who, just a person was walking around the ship. They looked down this stairwell, this ladder well, and saw somebody laying at the bottom of the ladder. So they're like, oh, hey, that person's hurt or something. So what do? They go down the ladder well. A little while later, somebody else comes by, looks down the ladder well, and, oh, hey, look, there's 2 people laying down there. So what do? They go down the ladder well. Next guy comes by, looks down there, oh, look, there's 3 people laying there at the bottom of the ladder well. What does he do? He had a brain cell. He called it in. He called it in as a casualty. He called on the sound-powered phones, which are the communication system on a ship. He called and let everybody know. Well, it turns out they had a Freon leak. Freon is a gas that is heavy. It's a heavy gas that sticks. It goes to the lowest point. So as those people went down there, they were overcome, passed out, and died. 3 people died because they didn't inform anybody that they were there. And they didn't think about the fact of preparing themselves with a breathing apparatus prior to going down there. One person, yes, I get it. That's a tragic accident. But the first person on scene that saw that person down there should have called it away and had the appropriate people show up on scene to analyze the situation. 2 lives could have been saved. That's why you don't want to be the only person in the know. So communications, you can have many different ways. You can have, strings running back to a central station where you'll need another person on 24-hour watch, basically like your watch commander. The person in charge, oversight, whatever you want to call it. Guard officer, whatever. You can assign them any name you want. You can have strings running back to them, and then like simple Morse code or something like that. Or you can have handheld FRS, GMRS, ham radios, CBs, whatever. The more secure, the better. Or you can have, what's really sweet, is old surplus Army, military, field phones. You can get them pretty cheap. I think cheaper than Dirt has them. I think Sportsman's Guide has them. And it's a phone setup. You lift it up, and they pick it up on the other end. And you have just wires. You can buy it by the roll. You have wires running from the post to the command center. That way you can have communication. Anyway, communication is very vital. What else in there? So this is why standardizing group firearms is important. If everybody has AR-15s, you can have, if a post standard, say they go there with 6 mags, say they have, 4 in their plate carrier chest rig, 2 in a cargo pocket, or 1 in a cargo pocket or on their battle belt or whatever, and 1 in the rifle. You can have another, however many mags you want, an extra 6 full reload, 10, 20, 30, 100 extra loaded magazines on each post. That all depends on what you want and lots of other things. How many you have and everything. Secondary ammo and magazines, aka handgun, I wouldn't really worry about that. It's not a necessary thing. If you choose to do it, great. Better. It's better to do it than not. But it's not that much of a worry. Those are most of the things. A way to keep warm and comfortable, but not too warm and comfortable so they fall asleep. Let me see. Security. Proper security also doesn't just include fixed positions like I'm talking about. LPOPs, which is listening post, observation posts, or fixed fighting positions. LPOPs are just positions that somebody mans, or a person, quote unquote, mans, woman's, whatever, and they're just listening and observing. They don't necessarily have cover. They don't necessarily have a good position to fight from. A fixed fighting position, however, is a ballistically protected position where they can engage in a firefight and have a good amount of ballistic protection from incoming rounds. With that said, what is the other thing? You've got mobile defense. You should have patrols out. So we're talking more people. Oh my gosh, how many people does it take to set proper security? I don't have that many people in my mag. I get it. One thing is, depending on the area, the threat, how rural you are, what the intel you have on the area is, what your scouts, which is what I'm saying, mobile scouting is the next thing, but what your scouts are reporting, what other people are reporting, what other groups you're working with, whatever neighborhoods, whatever it is you're working with, if you have a really good grasp of what's going on around you, you might be able to lighten up your security a little bit and maybe have the mobiles and 2 points. Although I don't recommend that, but you may have to. I would say at least 2 mobile patrols out, covering the full 360 degrees around your location at different distances. They need to patrol out far enough so they can identify any potential threats and or what is going on at a realistic range of engagement so that you can engage anything as far out as possible from your camp, from your location. How far? Terrain dependent. If you're flat, you're like in Kansas, we can see forever, you probably want to go out 500 yards, maybe 1,000 yards. I would say probably 1,000 yards and patrol at least 1,000 yards out. earlier, post standers, watch standers, and people are going to be able to engage threats at 1,000 yards? No. Realistically, 3 to 5, maybe 600 yards, depending on your weapon systems, maybe 700, realistically speaking. So yes, terrain dependent, but you want to have a good grasp on what's around you, what's going on around you, all that kind of stuff. So this is, I may do another video about this because there's lots more to talk about with security, but I think this is a pretty darn good video for now. I think it gives you some good ideas on setting security and some of the concepts around it. So I appreciate you guys here. Prep a little every day. Prep at a peace of mind, out of fear. Stay positive. Keep your heads high. Keep your heads on a swivel nowadays. I love you guys, and blessings to you and yours.